What's happening, guys, and welcome back to the riot. So, a couple of weeks ago was LA Comic Con, and let me tell you, it was a great time, man. It was amazing. I got to see friends I haven't seen for a while. I got to, pick up some things I've been wanting to pick up for a while. It was just a really, really, really fun time. And speaking of which, what's really cool is there's this book I've been basically hunting like fucking Ahab trying to find, right? And it's always been just a little bit out of my reach, but I finally found it. I was finally able to buy it, and that book is Grant Morrison's The Invisibles. I mean, look how thick this thing is, man. It's like thicker than the Bible, but it's the collected works of The Invisibles. I am not sure how familiar you guys are with Grant Morrison, but for me, he's one of my favorite writers. I rank him up there with guys like Alan Moore, Chris Claremont, you name it. And this book did cost me a king's ransom, and your boy's probably going to be eating cup of noodles for the next month. But you know what? I finally got it. It's mine. It is never, ever, ever, ever leaving my sight. But besides buying the book, I've been wanting to buy for a while. Film Threat had a panel this year at LA Comic Con called "Why 99% of Movies Suck Today," right? And it was very cool. It was basically from Film Threat. It was me, Chris Gore, Alan Ing. We had Gary from Nerdrotic. We had Anna, that Star Wars girl, and we had Paulie from Paulie the Latino Slant, who, by the way, if you haven't heard of his channel or seen his channel, you should. I'm gonna put his link in my description. But and I actually did a show with him recently about Wakanda Forever and some other things. But Paulie's great, man. He's hilarious. I still say he has the best mustache in the business. And anyway, so it was a good time, and you guys showed up in droves. It was literally standing room only, man. It was like, honestly, I think it's the best panel that Film Thread has ever had, and it was because of you guys, man. You guys kicked ass. I love the engagement. I love the questions you had for us, and it was just a fun time. After the panel, we all went out to dinner together. We were talking about just how cool you guys were, and how grateful we are that you guys basically support us, man. But I remember the next day I was on the showroom floor, and I was thinking about the panel, and I thought, yeah, it was good, but I spend a lot of time, especially as a critic. I have to dissect movies all the time. I was thinking I spend a lot of time thinking about movies I don't like, right? Or TV shows I don't like. In this case, movies. Um, and I'm like, when do I ever spend, or when's the last time I just talked about movies I love, right? And so it got me thinking, and it was cool because I started thinking about all the movies I loved and how I felt when I watched those movies. And I was like, you know what, man? I'm going to do a show on this because if you guys know me, I'm a man of balance. I said that in my very first video on YouTube that everything about me is about balance. So I spent enough time talking about the bad shit. I'm gonna spend some time talking about the good shit, right? So, and by the way, getting this list together, getting a top 5 list for me together of my favorite movies was no easy task. It was I had a hard time putting this list together. I was suffering, man. I think I changed this list 4 or 5 times before I finally brought it down to this list. And even this list, I'm still kind of like, yeah, there's other movies that could be here, but I'm satisfied with this list I put together. And anyway, let's just get to it.
Do you see what happens, Larry, when you fuck a stranger in the ass?
Come on, man. The Big Lebowski. I believe it came out in 98, directed by the Coen brothers, starring Jeff Bridges, John Goodman, Steve Buscemi. You had guys like Sam Elliott, Philip Seymour Hoffman was in there. Julianne Moore was amazing. And basically, The Big Lebowski is about, it's really just about a man and the love of his rug, right? Which gets damaged when 2 guys break into his house and piss on it. but it's a case of mistaken identity because they thought they were breaking into the house of some other guy that they were supposed to kind of intimidate, and shenanigans ensue from there. Okay, and it's just what's funny about the Big Lebowski actually is I remember everyone talking about it, and this is before it became like a cult classic, right? This is like around the time it came out. People were saying how good it was, so I went to go see this movie, and I didn't get it. I didn't get it the first time I saw it. Like I watched it and I was like, what are people talking about? Like, why is it so good? Right. So I remember a whole year passed and I watched it again and it clicked. I got it. I completely got it. Like so much so, like that movie had such an impact on my life that I kind of modeled my life, myself after Jeff Lebowski, or the dude as he's called in the film. And it's one of those movies, man, where I wish even after having seen it like 30 times, I still can't really tell you what the film's about other than what I described because so many crazy things happen throughout this film, but it's done in such a very stylistic way that only like the Coen brothers can do. And if you've seen any of the other Coen brothers movies, then you know how like left field they can go. But it's a funny movie. It's one of those movies where there's these legendary lines, these legendary characters. I think there's like 1,000 memes already based off the Big Lebowski. Great film. Definitely go watch it if you haven't seen it. All right, my next favorite on the list, Office Space. Come on, man, Office Space. So, guys, before I get into the movie, back in like the early 90s, if you worked in an office or if you were like a temp at an office, it was like this soul crushing place, man, where there were these giant tubicles, right? I mean, cubicles, where you couldn't see your coworkers, right? And there was like no view of anything. And for 8 hours a day, you were under these dim lights, right? These ugly dim lights that made everybody's skin look gray. It was a horrible, horrible experience. And what Office Space is basically it's a movie directed by the legendary Mike Judge. If you've ever seen Beavis and Butthead or King of the Hill, you know who Mike Judge is, okay? Um, but it stars Ron Livingston, who plays this dude named Peter Gibbons, who he's kind of a weak dude. He lets people take advantage of him. He doesn't really speak up for himself, and he's in this toxic relationship with this woman. And so the woman that he's dating at the time convinces him to go to a hypnotist, right, with her, like a couple's hypnotist, and he ends up hypnotizing Peter to be like a quote unquote alpha male, right, or just at least to not give a fuck about things. And the hypnotist has a heart attack and dies before he can take the spell off him, right? So basically, he goes into that office again, and he's a totally different guy, and it's just a funny movie, man, especially for if you ever worked in the office during that time, like it relates to you on so many levels. In fact, I remember one of the first jobs out of or in college I took was at one of these offices. And so when Office Space came out, I couldn't even get into it because it was too close to home, right? Like like I was having PSTD, PSTD, PSDDC. Anyway, guys, I'm sorry, my edibles have already kicked in. So, um, but I just remember like I couldn't even watch the film until like years later, and then it was funny, right? Because it's never funny when you're going through it. So, um, but yeah, and the cast, man. I mean, you had Gary Cole, who plays Bill Lumbar, who's Peter's boss, and this dude is hilarious. He is a total asshole, but like he does it in like the best way. You had Stephen Root, the great Stephen Root, who plays a guy named Milton, this weirdo guy named Milton, who basically has this obsession with his red stapler, and he does a very horrible thing at the end of the film. So, great cast, man. Hilarious movie. It's one of those 90s classics that I think still holds up which is very hard to do these days. And yeah, like I guarantee if you watch it, you're gonna laugh your ass off. So, all right, next up on my list is James Cameron's Aliens. I almost feel like nothing else needs to be said after that, right? Because if you haven't seen Aliens and you don't know why that's on my top five, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, um, this is James Cameron's masterpiece for me. Like, I know people love Terminator, which I do. People have a lot of other James Cameron properties. For me, Aliens was his chef's kiss. And starring Sigourney Weaver, who reprises her role as Ellen Ripley. And if you saw the first Alien, which was Ridley Scott, the tonal differences in those movies, uh, where Alien, the Ridley Scott version, felt more like a horror film, the James Cameron version, was straight up sci-fi action and has the most memorable cast of characters as far as, lines and memes. And you had the late great Bill Paxton, who plays Hudson, who basically to me steals the show from Sigourney Weaver. You have Michael Biehn from Terminator and Paul Reiser, right? And just from beginning to end, not only is it nonstop action, but it's organic. You know what I mean? Like everyone in that film feels like they should be where they are in that film. And here you have this heroine in Sigourney Weaver. Sorry, Jennifer Lawrence, you weren't the first. You have this heroine in Ellen Ripley that whether you're male or female, you believe that she's kicking ass in this film. It's just such a great sci-fi action film, and it's the only one on my list. But I for me, it might be in my top three of sci-fi movies of all time. And I don't think anything else needs to be said. Like I feel like you know how dope Aliens is, right? So I'm gonna quit talking about it. That was a layup. That was a gimme. That's probably in everybody's top five list. So, all right. So the next film on my list, huh? Well, you guys already know what it is, man. I mean, if you've seen any of my videos, then you know what I'm about to say.
Warriors, come out to play. Warriors, come out to play.
1979, The Warriors, right? Directed by Walter Hill, I believe. And man, this movie, I remember watching a double feature with my dad. It's one of those great memories I have with him. I remember us having a double feature of watching this and Escape from New York. And it was just such a, for me, it was like a revelation, right? Because like I don't remember before that me and my dad watching like gritty movies together, right? So The Warriors, starring Michael Beck, who I think the only thing he's ever done after that was Xanadu, and James Remar, who some of you guys might know from the show Dexter. He played Dexter's father. So um, the movie basically is about this big gang summit, right? Going on in New York. And it's called by this charismatic gang leader named Cyrus. And what Cyrus wants to do is he wants to unite all the biggest gangs in New York against the cops, right? And so they're all supposed to show up, no weapons, and it's supposed to be a peaceful meeting amongst the gangs. And so, and when I say gangs, guys, like I almost have to say it like almost loosely because the gangs in this movie are very cartoony, if you will. Um, they're like something out of a comic book, right? Like you have this one gang called the High Hats, and they had they're a gang that wears top hats, right? So that's their theme. They're the High Hats. And I'm not even going to get into the baseball furies. You guys will have to just find that out when you watch it. But Anyway, Cyrus calls his big meeting, and somebody in the audience, in fact, the clip of the guy I just showed you, basically takes out a gun and assassinates Cyrus. He shoots him, right? Everybody's running, running around because right as this happens, the cops show up. So everyone's just trying to get out of Central Park, I think they're at. And the guy who shot Cyrus basically blames the Warriors for it. So now you have every gang in New York looking for the Warriors, right? And the Warriors from Coney Island are basically, the whole point of the movie is from them to try to get back to Coney Island from Central Park. But in doing so, they encounter all these different gangs, like one at a time. And it's just such a cool movie, man. It's a badass movie. It's funny because I think uh if there's only like maybe 10 or 15 minutes of dialogue in the whole film. So not a lot of dialogue, but just a lot of cool action, a lot of cool scenes. Again, this one just might be more of a sentimental pick for me because it's something that me and my dad kind of bonded over. But I don't think I'm alone in saying that the love of the Warriors is pretty wide felt. Like, I'm sure as you're watching this video, there are fans of the Warriors who are like, hell yeah, hell yeah. So yeah, if you guys haven't seen the Warriors, yeah, I recommend it. All right, guys, the last movie on my list, True Romance, starring Christian Slater. Wait, guys, wait till you hear this. Wait till you hear this list. Starring Christian Slater, Patricia Arquette, Val Kilmer, Brad Pitt, Dennis Hopper, Christopher Walken, James Gandolfini. Like, there's more people. Gary Oldman. There's so many actors I'm leaving off this list. It is stacked. Okay, and basically the film, directed by Tony Scott, brother of Ridley Scott. I believe this movie came out in '93. What the movie is about is boy works at a comic book store. Boy, when I say boy, I mean man, Christian Slater. Boy goes to the movies by himself on his birthday because he's a loser. Boy meets girl at double feature kung fu movie he went to go watch. Boy and girl fall in love. Boy has to fight girl's pimp for her, and then boy finds a suitcase of cocaine. This movie is, you add that up along with that cast I just named off. This was the craziest film I think I had ever watched at that time. And this was the first movie. This was my introduction to Quentin Tarantino, because though it was directed by Tony Scott, it was written by Tarantino, and you can feel Tarantino throughout the film. It to me, this is a Tarantino film that happened to be directed by Tony Scott. It's the dialogue was just impeccable. There's a scene between Dennis Hopper and Christopher Walken. I'm not going to even ruin that for you. I want you to watch it, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you've ever written anything that involved dialogue, if you're a screenwriter, if you're, a novel writer, I don't care what you are, the dialogue in this movie is mwah. It'll have you frothing at the mouth. Okay. True Romance for me, like I said, my first introduction to Tarantino, my first introduction into that style of storytelling. And I just remember from beginning to end, like I remember going into it, I wasn't as sure about it. And I remember leaving that theater thinking Hollywood is going to be different after this, right? Like there's no way they're going to be making film the same way after this film. Of course, and then, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction came after. But this movie for me changed a lot of what Hollywood was at that time. So I would say True Romance might be in my top 3 period of all time. Even if the list change, it's going to be up there for me. So it's a great movie, guys. It's a great movie. Everybody kills it. Everybody, especially Patricia Arquette. Like, she is a knockout in that movie, man. I can't even say enough. So Anyway, guys, that's it. That's my that's my top five. Again, like I said, that list can change at any given time. There's so many movies that I didn't talk about, like Kill Bill, Empire Records. There's a lot of movies that could have made that list that didn't, but I'll save that for another time. Anyway, guys, please leave a comment if you feel inclined. Share the video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. That's always helpful to me. Again, this wasn't going to be a controversial video. I wanted to just be something like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling in the mood, and kind of give you an insight into my opinions on film. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys soon.